Listen closely, because you need to understand exactly what just happened regarding Gaza. Donald Trump has created something called the Board of Peace to oversee the reconstruction and demilitarization of the Strip following the ceasefire. On the surface, it sounds reasonable. But here is the problem. He invited Turkey's Erdogan to join. He invited Pakistan, Qatar, Jordan. These are countries that Israel views as hostile to its national security. Countries that have aggressively condemned Israeli operations. Countries that maintain deep ties with Hamas, and Benjamin Netanyahu is furious. He is calling this a betrayal. His government is leaking to the press that Trump did not consult them, that the board's makeup is a threat to Israel, and that putting Erdogan on a Gaza oversight board is like putting the fox in charge of the henhouse. But Trump does not care. Because Trump's vision for Gaza isn't about what Israel wants. It is about what Trump thinks will work. And he believes Muslim-majority countries need to own the problem, even if that means sidelining America's closest Middle East ally. Picture this. It is January 30th, 2026. The White House. Trump is holding a press conference at Mar-a-Lago with his Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. They have just returned from a whirlwind tour of Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, and Doha. Trump steps up to the podium and announces the formation of the Board of Peace, a multinational body designed to oversee the demilitarization and reconstruction of Gaza. He reads the list of participants: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain. These are standard choices, countries with normalized or pragmatic relations with Israel. Then he drops the bomb. He adds Turkey, Pakistan, Jordan, Indonesia, and Qatar. In Jerusalem, the silence from Netanyahu's office is deafening, because those 5 countries include some of Israel's harshest critics. Turkey has accused Israel of genocide. Pakistan does not even recognize Israel's existence. Qatar has hosted Hamas leadership for years. And Trump just gave every one of them a vote on how Gaza is governed. I'm Herrick McCain. Welcome to Firepoint. If you want the unvarnished facts about what Trump's Board of Peace actually means, subscribe to this channel right now, because this isn't just about pouring concrete in Gaza. It is about Trump remaking Middle East diplomacy in his own image, without Israel's input, without traditional U.S. allies leading the charge, and definitely without asking for Netanyahu's permission. Hit subscribe because this story reveals the raw reality of Trump's foreign policy. Let's get to the reality of what is happening. The headlines are obsessed with the guest list, who is in, who is out, and Netanyahu's anger. But that misses the point. The real story is that Trump is forcing a vision of peace that nobody asked for. Not Israel, not the Palestinians, not the Arab states. He looked at decades of failure and decided he could build a structure that forces cooperation. But structures don't solve wars. People do. And the people Trump has empowered have totally contradictory goals. Israel wants a demilitarized Gaza with zero Hamas influence. Turkey wants a sovereign Palestinian state. Qatar wants influence through money. Pakistan wants Islamic solidarity. These visions are not compatible, and Trump thinks he can mash them together into a working government. If you don't know the context, you need to look at the ceasefire timeline. In October 2025, after nearly 2 years of grinding war, a ceasefire was reached. Phase 1 was a prisoner swap. Hamas released all hostages. Israel released hundreds of prisoners. The remains of the last Israeli hostage, Ran Gvili, were returned on January 30th, 2026. He had been dead for months, but his body was the final leverage. Phase 1 also opened the aid corridors. Phase 2 was supposed to be the permanent end of hostilities and reconstruction. But Phase 2 never happened because Israel and Hamas could not agree on the definition of peace. Israel demands total disarmament and the dismantling of tunnels. Hamas calls that surrender and demands the right to govern and maintain security forces. So we have a ceasefire, but no peace. Into this void steps the Board of Peace. The theory is that this multinational group will bridge the gap. They will handle demilitarization to please Israel and reconstruction to please the Palestinians. But here's the fatal flaw. The board has zero enforcement power. If Hamas refuses to give up its rockets, what does the board do? Is Erdogan going to send Turkish troops to fight Hamas? No. If Israel launches a raid to stop a rocket launch, what does the board do? Write a letter of condemnation? They are already doing that. The board is a debating society with no army, and the structure is a bureaucratic nightmare. Trump announced the Board of Peace as the top authority, but there is also a National Committee for the Administration of Gaza made up of Palestinian technocrats. They handle the daily grind, schools, water, power, but they report to the board, and the board reports to the Office of the High Representative for Gaza, run by Nikolai Mladenov, a former UN envoy. So you have 3 layers of management. Technocrats do the work. The High Representative coordinates. The board oversees. And on top of that, there is a Gaza Reconstruction Executive Board handling the money. Nobody knows who is actually in charge. The French Foreign Ministry openly stated that the charter raises major political and legal questions. That is diplomatic code for this is a mess. But here is what truly enraged Netanyahu. It isn't just that Turkey and Pakistan are at the table. It is that Israel is not. Trump created a government for the territory right next to Israel, a territory that poses a direct threat to Israeli citizens, and he didn't give Israel a seat. Instead, he invited countries that do not recognize Israel. From Netanyahu's perspective, this is insanity. How do you verify demilitarization if you aren't in the room? When Israeli officials asked why they were excluded, they were told their presence would ruin the board's credibility with the Arab street. If Israel is there, it looks like an occupation. Trump wanted legitimacy, so Israel got cut. Netanyahu's response was immediate. He got Trump on the phone. Leaks suggest it was ugly. Netanyahu argued that verification is impossible without the IDF. Trump told him to work through Mladenov. Netanyahu countered that Mladenov doesn't have spies in Gaza. Israel does. Trump allegedly told him to share the intel and then hung up, telling him to figure it out. Netanyahu then turned around and authorized leaks painting Trump as naive and dangerous to Israeli security. This is the same prime minister who spent the last year calling Trump the greatest friend Israel has ever had. Now he is briefing reporters on Trump's incompetence. The international reaction is all over the map. Iran says the board undermines Palestinian self-determination and legitimizes occupation. Russia is playing dumb, saying they need more details on the security forces. China is silent. The EU is split. France and Germany are skeptical, while Italy and Poland are on board. The Arab states are playing a double game. Saudi Arabia and the UAE joined the board and praised it publicly. But privately, they are rolling their eyes. They know Erdogan will use the platform to grandstand. They know Pakistan is just there for the optics. They joined because you don't say no to Trump, not because they think it will work. So what happens next? The board meets this week, likely in the Gulf. Mladenov will present a plan. Countries will give speeches. Then the fighting starts over the rules. How are decisions made? Consensus, majority vote, veto. If Turkey has a veto, nothing that helps Israel will ever pass. If it requires consensus, the board will be paralyzed. If it is a majority vote, the Muslim majority bloc will outvote the moderates every time. The boring procedural rules will decide if this board functions or fails. In the medium term, the next few months are the test. Hamas still has thousands of rockets and small arms. The ceasefire says they must disarm. They haven't. Will the board demand it? If they do, and Hamas says no, then what? Do they send troops? No one wants to fight Hamas. The only force willing to do it is the IDF, and they aren't invited. So the board will likely ask nicely, Hamas will refuse, and nothing will change. This is the enforcement gap. You cannot govern Gaza without the will to use force. My assessment is this. the Board of Peace will become a talking shop. Countries will meet, issue statements, and coordinate some aid money. But the core conflict remains. Hamas keeps its guns. Israel doesn't trust the board, so Israel will continue conducting raids when they see a threat. The board will condemn the raids, Israel will ignore the board, and we return to the status quo, just with more bureaucracy. Everyone will blame the board. Palestinians will say it failed to stop Israel. Israelis will say it failed to disarm Hamas. And Trump will claim it is a huge success because meetings are happening. The best-case scenario? Mladenov pulls a rabbit out of the hat. He builds trust with Israeli intel and Hamas leaders. Turkey and Pakistan behave themselves. The Saudis pour in billions for rebuilding. The economy improves, and Hamas decides that keeping the money flowing is more important than keeping the rockets. They slowly disarm under international monitoring. Israel accepts the new reality. Gaza becomes a semi-autonomous state run by technocrats. It isn't perfect, but it is stable. The middle case? The board limps along. Aid flows slowly. Corruption eats a lot of it. Hamas keeps its weapons but stays quiet to keep the cash coming. Israel hits high-value targets occasionally but avoids full-scale war. It becomes a frozen conflict. Not peace, not war. Just a tense standoff managed by a committee. The worst-case scenario: the board collapses. Hamas openly defies disarmament. Israel resumes a full air and ground campaign. The board is powerless. Turkey uses the meetings to attack Israel. The Saudis quit in frustration. Mladenov resigns. The entire structure dissolves, and we are back to square one, but with more cynicism than before. Watch for these indicators. Does Mladenov actually get into Gaza? If he is stuck in a hotel in Cairo, it is a sham. He needs to be on the ground. Does the money arrive? Pledges are words. Wire transfers are reality. If the billions don't show up, the board is dead. Does Hamas hand over anything? Even a token gesture of disarmament counts. If they give up nothing, the board has no leverage. And most importantly, does Israel launch a major operation? If the tanks roll back in, it means Netanyahu has decided the board is useless and is taking matters into his own hands. This impacts more than just the Strip. It reveals the Trump doctrine. Previous presidents tried to facilitate agreements. Trump is imposing a structure. Participate or don't. The train is leaving the station. That works if you have leverage. But Trump is losing leverage with everyone. Israel will prioritize survival. Hamas will prioritize power. And the board might end up as a monument to Trump's ego rather than a vehicle for peace. History will ask why Israel was left out. Was it strategy or spite? Trump and Netanyahu have had a rocky road. Netanyahu was slow to congratulate Trump in 2024. Trump called him disloyal. Is the Board of Peace a way to punish Bibi? We won't know for years, but if this is personal, the board is doomed. This isn't about morality. Gaza needs to be rebuilt. 2 million people are living in ruins. A coordinated international effort is the only way to fix it. But that effort needs teeth. It needs legitimacy. And excluding the country with the most skin in the game, Israel, seems like a fatal error. But maybe Trump sees an angle we don't. Maybe he thinks an Israel-free board is the only way to get Arab buy-in. Time will tell. But Netanyahu's fury suggests the risks are massive. If this breakdown helped you see the true mechanics of Trump's Board of Peace, hit that like button and subscribe to Firepoint. The first meeting is days away. What happens there will decide if Gaza has a future or if we are just setting the stage for the next war. Let me know in the comments. Can a board without Israel actually govern Gaza, or is it destined to fail? I'm Herrick McCain, and I'll see you in the next video.